And so that brings me to the Christmas story. And there are a couple of different ways to look at this Christmas experience. The first one's rather traditional. It's one that most of us grew up with. I actually rather like it, but a lot of Unity people don't like it, so I want you to just bear with me. So imagine for a moment that here is humanity caught up in the shadows, fearful and paralyzed, thinking that those shadows are the reality. And up above in the sky somewhere, I said this was a traditional version, is God looking down at humanity. And God wants to help humanity. God sees our fear and our pain and wants to help. Now, God couldn't just tell us, because God knows that we don't have that consciousness to understand. God would want to say, listen to my words, put these words inside of you and understand. You know, sure, these movements and figures are on the wall. Sure, pain and death and tragedy are out there. But they're not the truth. There's nothing to worry about. They're only from where you stand in your consciousness. And there is more to this picture. Turn around you, look behind you. God would want to say that to us, but God would know that we would not be able to understand. And so God would want to send us a gift, something or someone who could come and show us the way. And so we have this traditional story of Christmas, that God sent himself in the form of a baby. It's a beautiful story. If you have trouble with that image, and many people in Unity would, then let me put it to you another way. Let's say that there's a consciousness, and that this consciousness is everywhere present. And that this consciousness becomes aware of another part of itself, a part that thinks it's separate, and has become unaware. Unaware of its source, unaware of the light, and is only seeing the shadows. Has gotten caught up in those shadows and is experiencing pain. Now, wouldn't you imagine that this consciousness that is everywhere present would want to somehow communicate or convey the truth to this other part of itself? And so it decided to send an example, a model, an ideal. And that is another way of looking at it, but it's still pretty traditional. This says that Jesus was sent here especially for us, to show us what was real, to show us the light, to teach us that we could free ourselves from those chains of life, that we could get up out of our cave and to live life freely. Isaiah 9:12 says, the people walking in darkness have seen a great light. And the story in the Bible tells us that Jesus was that great light sent to humanity to bring them light in the midst of darkness. Well, there's an alternative idea, and it's one many people in Unity adhere to, and that's that Jesus was the man in Plato's cave who began as one of us, began chained and bound, just like all of the rest of us, and yet somehow figured out a way to break free from those chains. Now, whether he figured it out in one lifetime, or whether he came into this lifetime with it already figured out, we don't know. We do know that he knew the truth at a very, very young age. He knew his mission. He knew he was about his work. Jesus was an angel unaware. Not unaware of his mission, because I truly believe he knew what he came here to teach. But Jesus was unaware of the shadows. He knew they existed for most people, but they did not paralyze him. Even death did not paralyze him, because he knew it was only a shadow on the wall. He knew there was another reality, and he was aware of only the truth. He came in simplicity. He was born in a manger. Simplicity and purity, born of the union of wisdom and love. Joseph represents wisdom, Mary represents love metaphysically. And Jesus lived his life as an example to be followed. And like the man in the cave, he tried to tell people the truth. But in their puppy consciousness, in their child consciousness, they didn't understand it. And so he taught them and he showed them by his example. He performed miracles. did all that he did to show us another way of living. Jesus did not come as the great exception. He came as the great example. Jesus came to teach us that we too would do what he did. He said, "Greater things than this will you do." And he raised himself from the dead. He said, "Greater things than this will you do." Well, I haven't heard of anyone else raising themselves from the dead, so I guess we still haven't learned everything he came to teach us. We still find ourselves getting caught up in shadow living. And that's why we take this time every year at Christmas to remind ourselves of the one who came to show us the way. And remember that Jesus represents us, represents some part of us. The message of Christmas is that we are the gift. We are the angel unaware. And it's up to us to tell others about the shadow and the light. Regardless of who this man Jesus is or how he got here, whether you believe the traditional version, and it's totally all right if you do. It's a perfectly wonderful version. Or if you believe that Jesus was one of us who found his way out of the cave and into the light. Regardless of how you hold this, we honor this event. We honor this man who represents the ideal that we aspire to be. And I want to share with you an essay called "One Solitary Life" by that famous author Anonymous. Here's a man who was born in an obscure village, the child of a peasant woman. He grew up in another village. He worked in a carpenter shop until he was 30. Then, for 3 years, he was an itinerant preacher. He never owned a house. He never wrote a book. He never held an office. He never had a family. He never went to college. He never put his foot inside a big city. He never traveled 200 miles from the place he was born. He never did one of the things that usually accompany greatness. He had no credentials but himself. While still a young man, the tide of popular opinion turned against him. His friends ran away. One of them denied him. He was turned over to his enemies. He went through the mockery of the trial. He was nailed upon a cross between 2 thieves. While he was dying, his executioners gambled for the only piece of property he had on earth, his robe. When he was dead, he was laid in a borrowed grave through the pity of a friend. 19 long centuries have come and gone. It's actually been more than that. And today he is a centerpiece of the human race and leader of the column of progress. I am far within the mark when I say that all the armies that have ever marched, all the navies that were ever built, all the parliaments that ever sat, and all the kings that ever reigned, put together, have not affected the life of man upon this earth as powerfully as has that one solitary life. We give thanks to this man Jesus who came to us as a baby in a manger. Jesus may